I really want to get your take on this. So Ireland's considering a hate speech bill. A lot of people are warning that this is going to have an impact on the world because of the limitations it places on speech and what impact that's going to have on social media companies, the way they're going to have to adjust their terms of service. Now, Michael Schellenberger in particular, he dropped a tweet this week basically saying this is military intelligence working through their proxies to gain control of speech, to gain control of the internet. And he was basically saying this is an all hands on deck moment for speech, that this Ireland bill has to be stopped, that it's really a stalking horse for military intelligence to take control of the internet and free speech. What do you think about that?
I think the greatest threat we face, if I had to pick one, is the effort on the part of Western elites and power centers to gain more and more control over political speech on the internet, which obviously is increasingly becoming the only real way that we disseminate information increasingly. It's one of the reasons why I'm so indignant with this U-turn that the American right has done, because this to me is the overarching issue. And I had an Irish journalist on my show, I think the beginning of this week, maybe late last week, Ben Scallon, who has followed these issues a lot.
Yeah, I saw
that. And the law in Ireland is unbelievably terrifying. It permits the Irish government to criminalize speech that they deem hateful with no definition of what that means, hateful.
Right.
It allows them to prosecute you not just for disseminating the speech, but just for receiving it, for being
right, for having it on your phone. Right.
And there's no real due process. You're presumed guilty. And of course, as he was saying, like the problem is that even if you don't really get long prison terms for it, which is unbelievable that that's even a possibility, but even if you don't, you get branded forever guilty of hate crimes, of hate speech, like being a hateful person, a bigoted person, officially by the state. And that's part of the public record that follows you around for life. And I spend a lot of time, as you guys know, probably I live in Brazil for 18 years, and there's an effort in Brazil, and it almost succeeded, and they're trying again, to implement one of the most repressive online speech laws that requires, that holds liable Facebook, Google, and all other platforms for any speech that they don't delete that the government considers to be disinformation or hate speech. And they have to decide that in advance. If the government goes and finds, oh, you allowed this post to remain online, that we now deem disinformation, they can impose massive fines on these companies, like the kind of fines that even companies this rich and big will feel. And obviously the intended effect of that, and the inevitable effect of that, will be that big tech will allow no speech at all except the most anodyne, right, the most establishment supporting, the most power aligning. And every time one of these other countries, you can say, if you're sitting in the United States, why do I care about Ireland? Why do I care about Brazil? Why do I care about the law in Canada? The whole point is two things. One is every time one of these countries goes a little bit further, it now moves the line that further back of acceptability to where the democratic world can go in censoring the internet and censoring political speech. But the other issue with it is that even though here in the United States we have a First Amendment, if these tech companies are now required to abide by censorship laws of the EU, which also has a very aggressive new legislative scheme, as does the UK, because the EU is a very big market. And I don't know if you remember, but when Elon Musk bought Twitter and he was like, the bird is now free, the EU chief censorship official came back and said, the bird will abide by EU laws, meaning you're not actually nearly as free as you want. And the idea will be that if enough countries outside the US force these countries to implement censorship frameworks in order to appease or comply with these other countries' laws as they interpret them, there's going to be no feasible way, technologically or financially, to kind of create a free speech, separate free speech version of these sites for the United States. So we will suffer the same amount of censorship as these European laws or Brazilian laws or Canadian laws impose and require. And of course, this is being done by the U.S. security state, Western intelligence agencies. Every time you dig into one of these disinformation firms that are the ones that are held up as sort of the apolitical, neutral arbiters of truth and falsity or what is hateful, they're funded by the same tiny group of billionaires and technology companies, but also governments. These are funded by the CIA and their MI6 and all of their adjacent organizations. It is absolutely an attempt for governments to seize control of our primary means of communicating about political speech. And if that doesn't terrify you, I don't know what does.
Please clap.